Hey, what's up everybody? I'm Joe, and today I'm going to show you how to make this into this. Stick around and find out how we do it. Alright everyone, like I just said before, today I'm going to show you how to make a Tintype or I think it's collodion process, usually off of like a large format 4:5 camera or an 8:10 camera, how to make your digital photographs kind of look like that and give off that effect. There's definitely something really special about it. The vintage look of like the chemical process that's left on the wet plate, because a lot of these photographs were filmed on metal plates, aluminum plates, and so you would see some of the streaking and the marks. There was also an inherently shallow depth of field when it came to large format cameras, and we can kind of mimic that in Photoshop. So I'm going to kind of run you through the process. It's fairly simple. I didn't come up with it. I just did some research and figured out how to do it, and the feedback has been really solid on a few of the pictures that I posted online. So I figured I'd share the process with you guys and see if it's something that you would like to try and do and just give you a different look. So the two programs that I'm using, Photoshop and Lightroom. Lightroom is basically where I just catalog all my photos. So it's not something that you need to have. You can just drag a photo into Lightroom. So I'm going to show you that process in a second. I'm going to start a screen recording. Click to record the full screen. All right. So I'm gonna just. All right, we're recording here. So first of all, I'm gonna bring up my Lightroom panel, and you can see this is a photo of my daughter. And what I've used here is I'm using a GFX 50s, and I'm shooting here at with an 85mm f1.2. This is a Canon EF lens adapted with a Tech Art, and you don't need this camera. You can use any camera you want, but for me, I feel like if I'm trying to mimic that large format look, the closer I can get to start, the better the end result's going to be. But we can certainly do some tricks in Photoshop to mimic that. So right now I have my my picture here in Lightroom that I chose. This is the one I'm going to use, and I'm going to export that into Photoshop. You could do a simple one like Command E. Will send it into Photoshop, but I've already done that. So here it is in Photoshop, and you'll notice right off the bat that I have a background and it's locked. So immediately I just want to layer from background and unlock that right off the bat. So once I have that layer unlocked, I'm going to make this window a little smaller here so I can see my tools at the bottom. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just take this layer and I'm going to drag it down to create a new layer. Okay, so by doing that, I drag it down to the little square icon all the way over to the right, and just release it, and here's my new layer. I want this layer on top. This is what I'm going to work with, and right off the bat, this is how I'm going to mimic some more shallow depth of field and also some motion blur. So you got to remember that back in the I don't even know what year this was, kind of this process started, but it was early 1800s, I believe. You got to remember that they were creating chemicals that they were painting onto wet plates, and they were light sensitive, but they weren't crazy light sensitive like they were today. From what I've heard is that if you can do a comparative ISO test on what the chemicals would be light sensitive wise, it would be around a 0.05. So that's not really sensitive, but it can be exposed, but usually it would have to be exposed fairly long. So you're talking 6, 7, 10 seconds. So you have somebody sit still for 10 seconds, it's probably going to introduce some motion blur. So we can mimic that, and again, that just enhances the overall look of it. So right now what I'm doing is I go to my layer that's on top, and I'm going to go to Filter, I'm going to go to blur, and I'm going to go down to motion blur. Now you'll see the motion blur panel come up, and right off the bat you can see that my daughter's face now is a little bit blurry, and this is what you want to do is what I believe is you want to make sure that you're on a horizontal, you're not vertical, you're not on an angle. I guess it really doesn't matter, but I like a horizontal blur. This is at 30. Obviously this is way too much, and this is nothing at all. So 30 is good. I feel like 30 is a good one. 34, 35. I'm going to bring it to 30. This is 33. It's not really a big deal, but you'll see why we're doing this. So now I hit OK. All right. So that's going to add my motion blur on top of my. If I take that away, here's the standard image. If I activate that layer, there's the motion blur. You can see the difference here. So now I know that I want her eye to be very sharp. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add a layer mask by down on the lower right here. You can see this black, this white square with a black circle in it, and you add a layer mask. And that's layer masking that layer. You got to make sure that you're on this layer, and you're going to see it white. Obviously, I'm explaining this as if you have no idea what Photoshop is at all, but if you have any kind of concept of Photoshop, this is probably a little bit redundant, and I apologize. So right now I'm going to use that layer. It's going to be white. I'm going to come over to my left here, and you're going to see my white and black panels. I'm going to make sure that anything that I want to erase from my mask, I'm painting black. So I'm going to make sure that the black layer is on top of the white layer. I'm going to choose a brush. I don't need anything crazy big, but a little bit, this is 200 and, let me bring this up. It's too much. Because I don't want to paint out her entire face area. I want to just get like her eyes and some of her hair. All right, so what I want to do is I want to choose a brush now. And for about me, it looks like 1400 is about the size I want to go for this particular picture. It's going to vary for you guys. And I'm just going to want to paint out some of her, her area, like in her eyes. And I'm going to want that razor sharp as it's supposed to be. Maybe some of her, hair that's on that same plane. Her shoulder. Because again, if she's looking over to the left, maybe some of her cheek and mouth. Just right up here, maybe. My computer's running a little slow because I got to upgrade to more memory, and I'm waiting for it to arrive. I want a fairly soft brush. I don't want anything too crazy and hard here. But I'm just going to paint that out, and maybe the front of her sleeve here. Because they, to me, would be all on the same plane. Everything else I'm going to kind of leave as is. Alright, so now you can see over here on the mask, you'd see what I've painted out. I'm going to do a little bit more on her shoulder area here, make it a little, okay. All right, so that's good enough. All right, the next process, what you're going to do now is you're going to bring up a channel mixing layer. By doing that, you go down to the right, you're going to hit that layer again, and what you're going to do is create a new layer. This layer, oh, I messed that up. Let me Control Z that. I'm going to go down to the it's your effects down here. It's a little circle with a slash through it. I'm going to hit that, and it's going to bring up all these different things that I can use here. And what I want to do is a channel mixer. Channel mixer layer will come up. This is where the magic happens, okay? And what you want to make sure that you're doing is you're going to click monochrome right off the top, monochrome. And that's going to put your image as a monochrome image, but okay, that looks nothing like a Tintype, but we're going to get there. So the formula is to take your reds, bring them to 100, right around 100. You're going to lose your image. 40s, you're going to bring to 0. I mean, your greens, you're going to bring to 0. Okay, bring that to 100. Your blues, you're going to slam all the way over to the right. And now we're starting to look like something, but we notice it's a little dark for my liking. So this is where you can kind of do your own work, and you can kind of adjust your reds, your red level. You can adjust your greens. You don't want to blow out your, if you go too high on your greens, you're going to see that it's way too white on the highlights. So I bring down the green channel so I can still see her freckles and her texture in her skin. If I want to lighten the image, I bring up my reds, but you got to be careful of that as well. Blues, you kind of want to stay where they are, because if you go dark with the blues, if you bring your blues back down, you're going to lose your image. So I keep it right here. All right, so let's just leave it at that. That's going to be fine, and we'll see how we look. You'll notice that it has that, you know, characteristic of a tintype when you're looking at the eyes, where they're very, very dark, but the highlights are very, very strong and white. And if you look at a lot of tintypes from, you know, original tintypes, you will see, you'll see that look. You'll see that, those haunting eyes. You know, now that I'm looking at this, I may bring my blur level back, but you know, I'm just gonna leave it. I don't want to go into the whole thing and just mess it up. So now here we are with our channel mixer. Our next layer, what we're gonna do is we're gonna go back to that effects icon, and we're gonna create another layer. And what we're gonna do here is we're going to do a photo filter. Photo filter will come up, and what I'm using is a warm filter 85. There's a couple different warming layer, you know, there's a cooling, there's a warm filter 82, and I like the 85. I think that's fine for me. And then what you can do here, you know, obviously you have a density. You can kind of change that out. You can have it as nothing, and you know, or you can bring it up. I kind of bring it around 30. 30 is good. You know, you can go a little warmer if you want. 35, 36. You got to remember that this color was kind of activated by the last step of the process when they added that chemical. So here we go. That's your warming layer. Now you're getting there, but obviously the magic happens when you add your vintage, you know, overlay. So you can add a vintage overlay simply by hitting, you know, if you go online and you pull up, you know, you Google search Tintype Photoshop backgrounds. I mean, they're right here. You can save one that you want to use. So once your file is in, it's really easy to move this and put it on the top layer. You simply collect this by hitting Shift and click your image. You drag it up to your original folder with your picture on it, and then you bring it back down and release everything. Don't worry about this prompt. You could just click out of that, and then you'll see your image on top of the original. Go back up, go to Free Transform, and then you can simply drag your overlay on top of your original image, and you know, you can just scale it as you need. It doesn't have to be exactly perfect because you're going to put this through like a screen anyway, and then you know, adjust it from there. So that just took hold, and you can see that that's the top layer right from here. Now you will pick something like a you can use anything you see fit here. You can use a linear multiply. Multiply looks pretty good. It's a little black. Some of these don't really work for what you're trying to do. I believe screen works pretty well. You know, that could be an option. Lighten, it's not really that good. Color dodge is really strong. I wouldn't use anything like that. You know, darken's not too bad. Or what is that? Overlay. Overlay is pretty good. Soft light, not too bad. Some of these just obviously are not going to work, but you can run through and check them out. You know, again, it's your artistic, you know, license to do with whatever you want, but some just aren't going to lend itself to, you know, the image. So I'm going to hit multiply. I'm going to use that one now. And then you can obviously adjust the opacity, you know, as you see fit. You can go all the way down to nothing, or you can kind of bring it back a little bit to where you want to go with it. And then the next thing that you really kind of want to do here is you want to add a layer mask to this image. Okay. So back in the day, you really couldn't dictate where your chemical process was going to, you know, lie on your image. So, but in today's day of digital, we have that wonderful way of deciding what we want. So I'm painting out where I don't want the chemical process to take hold. And obviously, you know, I want a clear vision of her eyes and her mouth, and that's what I want. So I'm going to do what I want to do. It's my image, but I'm painting out like her shoulder. Anything that's like kind of in focus, I kind of paint it out. But you can leave the other stuff. You can leave most of it if you want. And, you know, that's kind of how I'm going to leave the image right there. So now what I'll do is I'll take this image. This is just something that I like to do. I'll flatten the image. Okay, so now all my layers you're going to see are going to disappear. It's going to flatten. It's going to make the file a lot smaller to handle. I'll save it. When I save this, it automatically goes into... You'll see the little save bar at the bottom here. It's at 25% right now. It's kind of hard to see. It's all the way down here. I kind of clipped it. But I'll save this image, and it'll immediately go back into Lightroom. So now when I go into my Lightroom, I kind of make a couple more adjustments. Here it is here in Lightroom. So what I'll do here in Lightroom, if I want to, I'll bring it back up a little bit. I'll bring my exposure back up again, depending on how I want it to look. I'm not really going to mess with the contrast too much because I kind of did all that. Shadows, you know, I don't really need to do anything with that. Sometimes if I'm on a direct portrait, I'll come in and I will actually add a dodge brush and I'll paint the eyes a little bit. And I'll, this one's not too bad, but I'll bring these up. I'll bring... because I want that, you know, Tintype look. And if you've seen the Tintypes, you can see that the eyes are just very haunting. So I'll bring up my shadows. I'll bring the whites up a little bit. I'm not going to go crazy and come all the way up here, although you could, but with the Tintype, it's fine. I wouldn't do it on a normal picture. And then I'll just close that down. Sometimes I'll add some grain if I want to just, that's 35 millimeter. I'll add some medium format green to my image. It's not really going to make a whole bit of difference. That's kind of what I'm left with. And so there we are. We went from, you know, this to this. Not saying that one is any better than the other. It's just kind of, you know, a look that if you're trying to achieve, and there you go. So I'll export this and save that on the desktop. There we go. So that's how I do. That's how I do the process. It's pretty straightforward. It's not that difficult once you learn how to work with some layers on Photoshop. There's really only 3 major processes, or maybe 4. You're bringing your image in. You're going to, you know, do a motion blur. Then you're going to activate your channel mixer, adjust your colors as needed, and then you're going to bring in your photo filter. And then on the 4th step, you're going to bring in your vintage overlay and kind of paint out whatever you want. And then at the end, you're going to bring it into to Lightroom if you choose to, and make, you know, some final adjustments. So I hope you guys enjoyed this, and you know, I'll try to do more of these on my website and on my YouTube channel. As always, if you enjoy this kind of stuff, please give me a line, let me know, and follow me, and check me out on Instagram, and subscribe to the channel. I appreciate it. Thanks a lot, guys. See you later.